Hey everyone. You know, sometimes I get asked questions for my Scientology, my critical Q&A show that I do every week, and the answers to some of those questions are longer than would be appropriate for my Q&A show. And so those become the subject of their own separate video. And that's the case here today, where I'm going to talk about the Scientology's Sea Organization and the boot camp process of getting into the Sea Org and what that entails exactly. It's a little bit involved, and so I thought rather than kind of give it a brush off, well, it's like boot camp, instead I would talk in some detail about it and give you guys a real breakdown, step by step, of what goes on the EPF, or the Estates Project Force. Starting with, why is it called the Estates Project Force? What does that even mean? Well, in this case, a project force is a group of people, a force of people who go around doing projects. And the types of projects that the Estates Project Force works on are estates projects. In other words, grounds work, building work, things that have to do with back when they were on a ship, ship work, right? Maintenance work, that sort of thing. Upkeep kind of work, I mean. I don't mean down in the engine room kind of maintenance work. I mean sanding the decks or repolishing things or refarnishing or refinishing things. Stuff like that would be called estates work, because in Scientology lingo at least, estates refers to the actual physical grounds and buildings of an organization. So the Estates Project Force on a Sea Org base works to improve or maintain the grounds and buildings of the base that they're on. And so the Estates Project Force ends up filling in for where there are people missing, really, in the division of the organization that's responsible for estates. So when a person comes into the Sea Org to learn how to become a Sea Org member, before they're officially recognized as a Sea Org member, they have to go through the steps of the Estates Project Force. It usually takes somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks, although it can sometimes drag out for months. It totally depends on a person's ability to study, duplicate information, and be able to regurgitate it back to somebody when they're getting checkouts or tests or exams. And it relies also on the person's ability to do physical work. The work that goes on the EPF, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule, and we'll sort of break it down that way. When you come into the EPF, you are assigned a dorm. There's male dorms and female dorms. Even if you come in married and your spouse comes in with you, you still are assigned to a male or a female dorm. You're given an Epf uniform, and usually these uniform parts are simply recycled on a daily basis. It's not like you're issued a uniform that you're going to keep forever. And it's usually shorts and a t-shirt, because you're going to be running around doing, hard work, and it's going to be sweaty work in a lot of cases. So you get some shorts, and you get a shirt and a cap usually, and a belt. And I don't think they issue shoes or boots. I don't remember that, although that's totally up in the air. That very well could have changed. I did my EPF in 1995 when I first joined the Sea Org in the summer of 95. So it's been some years since I had my EPF experience, but of course I was in the Sea Org for 17 years, and all the way up until 2012 I was watching people doing the EPF, so I was kind of familiar with how it ran, and it was pretty much the same program all those years, and I don't know any real reason why it would have changed since I left back then. So schedule-wise, you are assigned the dorm, and then you wake up, and in the morning, first thing that happens is there is a muster. There's a lot of musters in the Sea Org, and especially on the EPF. You get everybody together, and they line them up, and they teach them how to stand at attention and at ease and parade rest, and you learn, these sort of military things. It's treated as a military exercise. In case anybody is coming into this totally fresh and has no idea what I'm talking about, the Sea Organization is a paramilitary group. It is Scientology's core group of the most dedicated members. So this is the boot camp for that activity. Then and this is usually pretty early in the morning, by the way, that the muster happens. I think it's, around 7:30, something like that. And then they break off and go get some breakfast and then muster again. And usually in the morning is when study happens, although study can happen in the afternoon or even in the evening. It depends on the unit and the area and how the schedules are run. There's no like formalized process on that. But it's 5 hours of study a day. Where you're getting through a series of courses, and I'm going to break those courses down for you. Then when you're not on study and you're not eating, because there's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, of course, with musters after each one, then you're working and you're assigned to these estates projects, okay? Also, by the way, this is where you learn how to clean. To what's called a white glove pass, meaning that the person who's when you've cleaned an area, let's say you're going to clean a room, you're going to dust it, you're going to vacuum, you're going to clean the walls, you're going to do all the normal cleaning things that you do, but the way that that you get a pass on the cleaning is a white glove comes out, right? Or a napkin will substitute for a white glove, and the person will take it and go randomly, whoever's doing the checkout on the cleaning will randomly go around to hidden crevices and corners and cracks and run the white cloth or the white glove over that area, and if it comes up with any dirt or dust, well, that's a flunk. And you got to clean some more, and then they'll leave, and then you got to get them to come back and get it checked out. And this level of cleaning is used in the quarters that you're sleeping in, the dormitories. So every morning you're supposed to get one of these passes. And then there's also, during the musters, it's not just accounting for everybody with everybody lining up and doing close order drilling of attention, addies, attention addies. There's a lot of that. But there's also other kinds of drills that are team-oriented drills in order to get everybody kind of out of their head and out of being an individual and being part of the team. The Sea organization is all about the group first and the individual last. So right from the get-go, you are being drilled in that you're part of a team, that your individuality is not really that important. And it's not really so different from a regular military boot camp in that regard. In fact, the attitude is exactly the same. So anything that would tend to differentiate a person or make them stand out as an individual, whether it's their dress, makeup, hair, anything like that, that's going to get thrown out real fast, right? If a person's and of course, any kind of dress or makeup or jewelry or anything that would violate, how the Sea Org's very conservative military type look, all that's going to go by the wayside too. So you're not going to see anybody on the EPF with nose rings or ear plugs or lip, studs or tongue studs or any of that kind of stuff. All that's going out. That's just, forget all that. Again, not so dissimilar to a regular military boot camp. And team drills there's hundreds of different kinds of team drills. Anything that'll get a bunch of people working together to a common goal is pretty much the kind of drilling. And this could include also dividing up into units and competing units one against another. So they might go up to the parking roof where there are fire hoses kept rolled up, and they might go and unroll the fire hoses and roll them back up and keep this against a stopwatch, right? And this requires people working together because, believe me, trying to roll up a fire hose by yourself is a near Herculean task. Or there might be, passing a ball or a message or whatever, any kind of drills like this. This is the kind of thing that is done during the musters. And then they are assigned the projects for the day. Every project that is done in the EPF is in writing. You're never told, go clean this area, and that's all you're told, right? Or go mow the lawn, or go, wipe those walls down or something. That's not how it works. Instead, you're given a project, and the EPF, maybe let's say it's 20 people, is divided into units. And the units will have an in-charge, or an IC, for in charge, and 4 people under that in charge. That would be a decent, a regular sized unit. So an EPF of 20 people might consist of 4 units of 5 people each. Each unit will be given their own project orders. Now, if it's a big project, requires a lot of people, then maybe the entire EPF might have to go do that based on a set of project orders, or maybe half the EPF goes and works on that. However it works out, you receive written project orders with a series of targets to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you generally go through them in sequence and go to an area, and the first target might be, gather up the materials you're going to need, and you run off to the place that's the tool shed that's got all that stuff in it. Let's say you're going to go out and do some estates work on the mowing the lawns, at the base in a particular area. So you go to the tool shed, you get the rakes and the plastic bags and the lawn mowers and any other equipment are be listed in the project orders, and the team then goes out and figures out who's going to do what. And the in charge is the one who's sort of assigning all of that and runs through the project orders and tries to get them done. And the idea is that everybody's running all the time. There's no slacking off. There's no laziness. There's no wandering around wondering what to do. It's like snap, snap and pop activity. And the IC is the one who's held responsible for the actions of the juniors, the people that the IC is running. So generally speaking, on your first day, you're not going to be the IC of a unit. And anyway, whatever the work is, they go through the project orders, and when the project is done, they then run over to the EPF in charge, or the grounds personnel or estates personnel who might be overseeing that project, and get them to look and make sure that the project was done satisfactorily and completely, and then they sign off on the project orders that was done, and the project orders are then turned back into the overall in charge for the EPF, and that person is a validated, fully completed Sea Org member already. That's their job, is to be the EPF in charge, or EPFIC. So, and that person is usually a bit of a drill instructor, drill sergeant type personality. They run the EPF hard. They are generally fairly pretty unsympathetic to any pleas for help, or for, not totally, it's not like they won't help you out, but if you're crying or complaining or whining, they're not interested at all in what you're saying. It's like, straighten up, toughen up, shut the hell up and get moving, is sort of the attitude of the EPFIC, right? Because you're there to get through, to do these projects. And the idea with all of this is not just to do grounds work or do estates work. The theoretical idea behind this is that you are teaching new people coming into the Sea Org how to confront MEST. And MEST is a Scientology word for matter, energy, space, and time. Put together, it is MEST, and that means the physical universe. Okay, objects, things that occur, that exist in the real world, are called MEST. Okay, this is a piece of MEST. Okay, so you're supposed to learn to be able to confront MEST. Right? Deal with it. Get hands-on. Get dirty. Get in there. Deal with it. Because the idea is that as a Sea Org member, you're supposed to be able to confront MEST so that you can then confront people and deal. And by confront, I mean not just look at or face, but manhandle, deal with. That's the idea, right? Is get control over these things, because a Sea Org member is expected to be at cause over matter, energy, space, time, life, and form. Hubbard defines a Sea Org member the same way he defines an operating thetan, or an OT, right? And as the definition I just gave there. So you're expected to be able to tolerate any conditions, deal with any situation, no matter how rough, and simply make it go right, to solve whatever problems need to be solved, deal with whatever barriers need to be overcome, so that you get done whatever it is you've been assigned to do. That's the attitude, and the EPF is supposed to toughen you up and train you in how to have a make it go right attitude, so you just are tough as nails and you just get shit done. Okay, that's basically the operating attitude of the Sea Org. And of course you can see how this would lend itself to some degree of abuse, in fact, quite a degree of abuse when taken too far. But on the other hand, you can also see how this could have a recruitment appeal to people who are, out in the non-Sea Org world, that this is a place where you're going to get rough, tough, and hard, and you're going to learn how to deal with things, and you're going to learn how to solve problems. Like, this has some appeal to people, right? And that's why people join up for this, and that's why they will endure something like a boot camp. And this, again, very, very parallel to how people join the military and go through that whole rigorous process, because I don't think anybody would call any kind of boot camp a walk in the park. And it's the same with the EPF. Now, some of the, cleaning this, I made a couple notes here I'm just looking at. You cleaning restrooms, cleaning the streets, moving furniture around, landscaping, grounds work, any of these things could be the kind of work that end up being done by the EPF. They also often were in the galley, where all the food is prepared for the base, doing cleaning after meals of the galley spaces, or also just cleaning all the dishes that were just used at the meals, because if the dishwasher isn't around, or there is no dishwasher posted in the galley, then it's, the EPF becomes a kind of service facility for the galley, where they just rely on the EPF to get that kind of work done. So those are the kind of work activities that are going on. And generally speaking, I think there's about 8 hours of sleep scheduled on that time. So generally, I think the EPF is up and about until, I don't know, around 11 or something. Then they go to bed, and then they're up at, 7:15 the next morning and right back at it again. And the EPF is a no days off, no frills, no thrills kind of activity. You're not there to, be, like I said, slacking or moving slowly or taking your time or figuring things out. None of there's none of that. It's like go, 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 go. Okay. Now, as far as the course work goes, okay, let's talk about the courses, because the EPF is ostensibly a manual labor activity, but you're only there as long as it takes you to get through a series of courses. I believe there's 5 of them. I listed them out here. And we'll walk through each of these courses. I think I have the sequence right. Like I said, it's been a while, and I couldn't find anywhere online that had the whole program laid out. But I happen to have done some work on some of the EPF courses when I was in the Sea Org, and so I had some recall of this, and I got what all the courses are. It starts with what's called the Basic Study Manual, which is a course that anyone in Scientology can do at any level in any Scientology church. And the Basic Study Manual is sort of a rapid survey of Hubbard's theories on education and study and how to study. And I've done videos on this already. You can find this in the Basics of Scientology series that I did. So I'm not going to rehash all that now, but like the thing about looking up words in a dictionary you don't understand, that kind of stuff. So the Basic Study Manual is basically a course designed for children. It's got children-like illustrations and very simple writing, and it's all in one book. And you go through that course. Would probably take your average literate individual, a couple days to get through it at most. And that's that. And if you come into Scientology, you come into the Sea Org semi-literate or illiterate, and there are no shortage of people who do that, you're going to be on the Basic Study Manual for a lot longer. And when you're in the course room doing this study, you have a supervisor, somebody who's overseeing all the progress of all the students in the class. And all the students are not on the same class or the same course. They all study at their own rate and on their own course materials. So you could have one student on course A and another student sitting right next to him doing course B, and another guy over, in the room doing course C, and maybe, another person on course A. I mean, it doesn't really matter. everyone could be doing different courses, or everybody could be doing the same courses, and it doesn't really matter. The class is run the same. Everybody comes in, they have a check sheet of 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to do, and the steps take them through the materials of the course. And by the time you've finished all the steps, which could consist of things like read chapter 1, then write an essay, then do a demonstration showing you understand this, and then get a checkout on that material by another student, on and on and on. You know, there could be 20, 30, 40, 100 steps in a course on a check sheet. You go through all those actions in sequence, and by the time you're done, the end result of the course is supposed to have been achieved. With the basic study manual, the end result is a student who can study using Hubbard's methods, right? So that's the first thing you do, and it's pretty obvious why that would be the first course. Following that is the Introduction to Scientology Ethics course. And this is another regular course that's delivered across the world of Scientology, but in the Sea Org, it's the Sea Org Introduction to Scientology Ethics course. So there's a few Sea Org specific issues included in the materials, as well as a coverage of a book called Introduction to Scientology Ethics, which has all of Hubbard's theories and ideas about how to be a good person, how to be ethical, in other words, how to be, following the rules and guidelines that Hubbard lays out as far as what is, a good moral character, and how should you behave, and how do you act around others, not from an etiquette point of view, but from an ethics point of view. How do you relate with others in an honest way with integrity, right, is the idea. And of course, Hubbard's ideas about ethics are a little creative in some ways. And I'll cover all of that in another video in the future on that Basics of Scientology series. But the ethics, the ethics course, the idea with the ethics course is it teaches you Hubbard's system of ethics and also Hubbard's system of justice. And that's another whole involved thing, but it involves courts of ethics and knowledge reports, which most people who have followed Scientology have heard something about. The snitch culture of Scientology, how everybody's writing reports on each other all the time. Well, this is the course that teaches you how to do that. And there are, there's knowledge reports and courts of ethics and things called ethics conditions, which are kind of involved, and again will be the subject of another video because it's very involved. But the idea being that you are, in some condition of operation, and you can improve your condition by following Hubbard's very clearly and very rigorously laid out steps to follow. And if you follow these steps, then you're supposed to improve your condition and make things better, is basically the idea. Whether you're doing that with yourself personally, or with the job that you have, or with the group you're involved in, these steps are supposed to be universally workable for anybody in any circumstances to improve their condition and make them better. Basically, in a nutshell. So you learn about all of that on the Introduction to Scientology Ethics course. And you also get a Sea Org attitude about ethics. And I should make a note about that here, that one of the purposes of the Sea Org, or the original purpose of the Sea Org, was to get ethics in on the planet. Okay, and that's a little Scientology phrase, get ethics in on the planet, meaning getting the planet operating in an ethical manner. Right? And now, this is all according to Hubbard's guidelines of what is and isn't ethical. So, for example, drugs. Drugs in Scientology are highly unethical under most any circumstances. I'm not talking about medicinal drugs now, I'm talking about recreational drugs. Out with them, right? So getting ethics in on the planet would include getting rid of all recreational drugs. That would be an ethical thing for a Scientologist to be working on. So, and that is an effort Scientology is making. And anybody who watches Scientology knows how horribly they're doing with that, because their materials are full of false information. And there's lots of recreational drugs that there's really nothing wrong with at all. And it's really not unethical to be doing them. But Scientology makes it a right-wrong proposition as to whether you should be taking recreational drugs. So that is something that would be, handled with getting ethics in on the planet. Okay, once you're done with that course and you're thoroughly indoctrinated into what is right and what is wrong according to L. Ron Hubbard, your next course is called the Basic Sea Org Member Hat. A hat in Scientology is a term for a job or a post or what it is you're assigned to do. You have a hat, right? Because Hubbard based this off the idea that different jobs literally have different hats. A fireman's hat or helmet is different from a policeman's hat or cap, right? So the hat that you're wearing determines the job that you're doing. So in Scientology, they call these things a hat. And the Basic Sea Org Member Hat is a course that gives you some basic references and issues from L. Ron Hubbard on how to be a Sea Org member and what's expected of a Sea Org member. And I pulled out a couple of these just for grins, so you can get an idea of some of what Hubbard is telling people. There's one, for example, and there's an issue in this course called toughness. This is a very heavily used reference from Hubbard in the Sea Org, but outside of the Sea Org, people don't see this. Public Scientologists don't generally see this material because they are contained in a separate kind of issue from what the public see. In the Sea Organization, you have flag orders. Okay, in regular Scientology, you have policy letters and you have bulletins, and I've quoted from those extensively in my videos. Rarely have I quoted from flag orders, but flag orders are black on white issues. They're black type on white paper, and they are directives for the Sea Org specifically, and most of them are considered confidential and not shown to the general public. So what I'm reading you right now is highly confidential. And this is called toughness, and Hubbard says this. Toughness is high on the scale. At upper levels in Scientology, we find ourselves unable to handle one area, and so instead of doing the natural thing and reducing the area we are trying to handle, we just double the size of the area. That's the way theta works, and theta is Hubbard's word for spirits or spirituality. How many times in your life have you decided, well, let's see, I couldn't handle so-and-so, I guess I'd better handle just a little bit less. And then the first thing you knew, you couldn't even handle that. What if you had said, all right, now let's see, I don't seem to be able to do this. Well, where's two of them? I recommend it to you very thoroughly. You can't handle something, you say, find a couple of tougher ones. The point is that you go in reverse. You've decided already long time since that it was rough handling a messed body. A pre-OT, right, somebody who hasn't yet reached the OT levels, a pre-OT who's fairly convinced that it's tough gets kind of anxious about handling this body. He knows he can only do one thing at once. He knows this. He knows it completely. Let him go down the street and work two bodies at once. Oh no, you could say, no, this isn't the right road out. This couldn't be. That's just more quantity. That's ... Hubbard says, I'm afraid that this is the road out. The job gets tougher as you move up the line to higher levels. Fortunately, I've designed it so each new level is attainable for most. The thing to do is keep moving over the bridge, keep working on the next level, and soon you'll be on the other side. I'll see you then. So this is just one example of how Sea Org members are indoctrinated to, if you can't handle what you're doing, well then clearly you just need to take on more, not less, right? And you don't need to stop and figure out what you're doing. You just need more piled on top of you. Okay, this is sort of the Sea Org attitude. And it's a lot of fun and games, and not really. It's actually an invitation to an extremely abusive environment is what actually goes on, and I'm being rather light about it right now, but the truth of the matter is that issues like what I just read to you are the justification or the rationale for why Sea Org members pile on abuses on other Sea Org members and expect them to just deal with it, right? That's the kind of thing, which is why I wanted to read that to you. You also have the Code of a Sea Org member. And this is talked about every now and again, but I thought I might go over a couple points here with you just to give you an idea of what kind of moral code Sea Org members have that they think they should be following. And you have examples here. This is the code of a Sea Org member has 18 points. I won't read all of them to you, but they have things such as point number 17, I promise through my actions to increase the power of the Sea Org and decrease the power of any enemy. Okay, and anything goes when it comes to fulfilling these points of the Sea Org code. Number 18, I promise to make things go right and to persist until they do. Right? Whether that means staying up all night to make that quota, you're making things go right and you're persisting until you do. Right? This is, again, justification or rationale that Hubbard gives Sea Org members for doing completely wackadoodle things. Like staying up all night 5 nights in a row in order to get some job done, which happened to me while I was in the Sea Org. We have here, I promise, point number 2, and this is an important one. I promise to uphold, forward, and carry out command intention. Now, command intention is capitalized. And basically, when Hubbard was alive, command intention was anything L. Ron Hubbard wanted. L. Ron Hubbard was the head of the Sea Org. He was command. And command intention is what it is that command wants that they push down the line to the rest of the Sea Org in order to get done. So you promise here to uphold, forward, and carry out command intention. That has now been turned over to David Miscavige, who currently runs the Church of Scientology and is the head of the Sea Org now. So when you're on this course, you learn all about these things. The next course is called the Welcome to the Sea Org Lectures. And this is a series of 5 lectures that you listen to that Hubbard gave in 1969 on board the Apollo, the ship he was running at the time, to new Sea Org members. And he was personally, lecturing them about how to be Sea Org members. At 1969, the Sea Org was only 2 years old. So it was still relatively fresh and new. And the first lecture is called The Quality of the Sea Org and What is a Seaman? And that lecture talks about landlubbers and being on a ship and confronting mess like I went over with you and those kind of points. The next lecture is called Welcome to the Sea Org. Most of that lecture talks about drills. Now, of course, on a ship, on the ocean, you need to drill your crew, because they need to be prepared for an emergency at any at any moment, on any short notice, right? But Hubbard took that principle and applied it to land as well. He said anybody in the Sea Org needs to be drilled and drilled on what they're doing and how to do it, and the whole crew needs to be drilled on things. And so when I was in the Sea Org, we were drilling, at least once, twice a week. On the ship, of course, you're drilling, almost every day. And Hubbard talks about that in that lecture. The next lecture is called Why the Sea Org is Successful. And in this lecture, Hubbard directly addresses shouting and getting in trouble, and why it is that you see Sea Org members shouting at other Sea Org members, and why people are generally pissed off all the time when they're in the Sea Org, and why it's acceptable to be in that condition, and why that's actually a good thing. And why getting in trouble is not really that big of a deal, and Hubbard really didn't understand why everybody was so concerned about it. This lecture was a really interesting look when I was reviewing the transcripts for all these lectures and sort of like, oh man, reminding myself of some of the stuff I'd been reading and listening to. This lecture was a really interesting look into Hubbard's thought processes of heavy ethics, heavy justice actions that he would take on the crew and then brush it off as though it didn't mean anything. Yet we're talking about actions like throwing people, little kids into a chain locker, which is the locker at the front of the ship that has the chain from the anchor wound up in it, right? And you throw a kid in there and you drop anchor, and that kid could get killed by that chain. When on the ship when Hubbard was running it, he threw a 4 or 5-year-old kid in there for days as a disciplinary punishment action. And he just brushes that kind of stuff off as, yeah, that's just how things are in the Sea Org. He also talks in this lecture about teammanship, surviving as a team, and why not everybody is meant to be in the Sea Org. Many are called and few are chosen, he says. The next lecture is called Third Dynamic Activity and Making Things Go Right. Now, third dynamic is a Scientology term for groups. If you're involved in a group, that group would be called, your third dynamic or one of your third dynamics. It's a group you're part of, okay? So, third dynamic activity and making things go right. And in this lecture, he talks, of course, about groups, and he talks about how staff, this is again another insightful lecture into Hubbard's mentality. And these lectures are not lectures that any public Scientologist is ever going to hear. They're not available at local churches. You can't go into Denver Org or Milano Org and ask to listen to these lectures and hear them. They're Sea Org only. So in this lecture, Hubbard talks about how staff Sea Org members do their posts and don't seem to care that much about their individuality or themselves or getting, paid or getting fed or doing their study or this sort of thing, and how that's just kind of how the staff are. And I found that fascinating, considering that, one of the things that a lot of ex-Sea Org members remark on, and one of the reasons I left the Sea Org, for me personally, is because I didn't have any time afforded to me in my schedule every day to do study and do Scientology. And yet I was there delivering Scientology to everybody else, but I wasn't getting any of it. And then this lecture, Hubbard full on gives that a pass and says, yes, that is how things should be. And I'd actually forgotten about that was in one of the most, one of the lectures you listen to, being indoctrinated into how to be a Sea Org member. So, you're sort of being told right from the get-go that you don't really matter that much as far as your own personal survival and enhancement goes, because the group is all and the individual is nothing. And that was basically Hubbard's attitude. Then the last lecture is called It's a PRO World. Okay, PRO. Public Relations Officer. And by that, Hubbard was referring to the subject of public relations. And he talked in this lecture about public relations, about shore relations, about how when a ship goes in and docks in an area, if that ship's going to be there for any length of time, they have to have some relationship with the people on the shore and in the port and the local community. And Hubbard talks about the difficulties that the Sea Org and Scientology have had pretty much in every port they went to. And oddly enough, Hubbard never really looked at what they were doing and thought, maybe we aren't quite doing this right. Well, he did a little bit, and he talks in this lecture about that and about how you're supposed to listen to the locals and pay attention to local customs and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, I don't know. The Scientology does practice this. The Sea Org does use this in their community relations. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And if you're ever wondering why it is that, like for example, in Los Angeles, the LAPD cozies up to Scientology, it's because when Scientology arrived in Los Angeles, they started looking at the police. They made inroads into the police station, the police force, found out what it is that's valuable to the police, and started to provide that to the police. Like, for example, hiring off-duty police officers to be security for Scientology events, and cozying up to the chief of police and this kind of thing, and telling him what he wants to hear, is actually applying this information from this lecture. So that's how Scientology improves its public relations. Now, I had another quote for you from Hubbard here, because he talked about psychiatry in here, and this is a quote that you're not going to hear very often, and so I thought I would read it to you because I thought you might be amused by Hubbard's attitude towards psychiatry. And here's something he tells Sea Org members about this subject. Quote, "The psychiatrists actually shaking down governments, working for other foreign powers, were actually able to get enough false intelligence information into enough files about Scientology and about us that where a country becomes very active, they start looking up all this information, which is all false. The situation heats up, and then they all of a sudden put the heat on. And then they become very curious about us and about what we're doing and so on, and yap, 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 yap. Then, of course, the psychiatrist is protecting a multi-billion-dollar empire. He has the greatest racket in the world. Governments all over the world appropriate him money. They appropriate him millions just off the cuff. Oh, you want a little money for research? Oh, good. We'll give you a little money for research. How about 100 million, huh? So this is how Hubbard talks about psychiatry to the Sea Org, right? So you wonder, if you're under Hubbard's spell and you're listening to this nonsense for any length of time, then you're going to hear Hubbard rant and rave about psychiatry. And since I was going through the transcript, I just thought this was an appropriate quote to pull out to give you guys an idea of how he talks about this stuff. All right. Once you get through those lectures, your next course is called the Sea Org Etiquette Course. And on this course, they cover some Emily Post book passages about manners and etiquette. And there is a Sea Org issue called Etiquette, which I pulled up here, which I thought I might read you guys a couple of the points. It's pages long, and it's all about courtesy and thoughtfulness on board a ship. But we were reading this on land, and we were still expected to apply this in one way or another on the Sea Org base that we were operating on, wherever we were, in my case, Los Angeles. So see if you can figure out how to apply some of these on land. Obtain the captain's or senior officer's permission to leave the ship. Before changing course or speed or starting engines, obtain the captain's permission. When boarding or leaving a ship, always salute the quarterdeck whether the flag is flying or not. Okay, really useful stuff, right? And this goes on for pages and pages. A coxswain always offers the tiller to the most senior officer. Great. That had zero applicability to my life the entire time I was in the Sea Org. Anyway, just some of the nonsense that you have to learn on the Sea Org Etiquette course. Then you have the personal grooming course, where you learn how to tie a tie and you learn how to wash your face and learn how to comb your hair and this kind of thing. Hubbard expected Sea Org members to be relatively clean and presentable. And then you have the last course, which is called the Basic Cleaning Course. And this is a course where you literally are educated on how to dust, how to clean windows with newspaper, how to polish brass with Brasso, and you practice all of this in the classroom, right? You dust tables and you polish some brass and this sort of thing. So so that's the cleaning course, right? And it's called the Basic Cleaning Course. There is no advanced cleaning course in the Sea Org. It's just this one. But this is where you learn how to do those white glove passes and that kind of thing. And so once you finish all of those courses, that whole lineup that I just walked you through, then you're eligible to actually graduate from the EPF. And you just need the overall in charge for the EPF needs to sign off that you have satisfactorily learned how to confront mess. And the course room supervisor, who's been overseeing you through all these courses, needs to sign off that you're a good student and you can study and you're a good little Sea Org member. And then they have a graduation ceremony and you graduate, and then you are assigned to an actual organization within the Sea Org and a specific job that you're going to do, and that's when you start your official Sea Org career. So all of that is a pretty detailed breakdown of the EPF, or the Estates Project Force, and how people go from regular Joe Scientologist to Sea Org member. Okay? So I thought that might be of some interest to you guys out there. I hope that you found this interesting, educational, and informative. Please leave any comments or feedback you have on this, or questions about it, if there's anything that I've left out here, in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for coming around, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.